This question says, given the quadratic function in vertex form, address the following. We have a bunch of parts to work through here. So our function is f of x equals -5 times x minus 2 squared plus 5. And this is in vertex form. Vertex form is when you have f of x equals a times x minus h squared plus k. In that ordered pair, hk is the vertex. Okay. So our function is f of x equals -5 times x minus 2 squared plus 5. And this 2 is, this 2 is in the same spot as h, and the 5 is in the same spot as k, making our vertex the ordered pair 2, 5. The next part says, does the graph open up or open down? And we can tell that this function, this parabola, will open down because of a. A is equal to -5, so my parabola will open down. The next part says, what is the equation of the axis of symmetry? So for a parabola, when you draw it, the vertex is right here. We have an imaginary line that goes through that vertex that's called the axis of symmetry. So it's called the axis of symmetry because if we were to fold the graph along that line, we're going to get a mirror image on both sides. So that's the axis of symmetry. And you notice that the axis of symmetry passes through the vertex. So we're going to use the x value of the vertex to write the axis of symmetry. So for this example, the axis of symmetry is the line x equals 2 because this function has a vertex at 2. The next part says find any x-intercepts. Okay, the way that we find an x-intercept is to let y equal 0. So for my function, I'm setting the f of x or y part equal to 0. I think I need to write down the function. It's -5 times x minus 2 squared plus 5. And I'm going to solve. I'm going to solve by isolating the square and everything it's attached to on one side. So I'll subtract 5 on both sides. That gives me -5 equals -5 times x minus 2 squared. Divide both sides by -5. That gives me 1 equals x minus 2 squared. Now that I've isolated the square, I'm going to get rid of it on both sides by square rooting. Square rooting will cancel out that square. And on the right, I'm left with the x minus 2. On the left, square root of 1 is 1. And I also pick up a plus or minus symbol because I square rooted that square. So then I want to add 2 to both sides. And that's going to give me x equals 2 plus or minus 1. 2 plus 1 gives me 3, and 2 minus 1 gives me 1. So those are my x-intercepts. X equals 3 and x equals 1. Okay. The next part is asking about the y-intercept. We find a y-intercept by letting x equal 0. So in my function, I substitute a 0 in for the x. That gives me -5 times 0 minus 2 squared plus 5. -5 times -2 squared plus 5. -5 times 4, because -2 squared is 4. -5 times 4 would be -20, and -20 plus 5 is -15. So we have a y-intercept of 0, -15. And it says to sketch the graph. Let me come back up here to the graph. And we found this function has a vertex at 2, 5, 2, 5 would be about right here. We had x-intercepts at 1 and 3. And we had a y-intercept at 15, should be here. And I'm going to connect these with a parabola, keeping in mind this vertex is a special point. That's where the graph is going to come to a peak. So we can sketch the graph. Okay, finally, we want to state the domain and range. The domain of every parabola is -infinity to infinity because this is a quadratic, which is a type of polynomial function. The range is going to start at -infinity and go all the way up to that vertex, which was at 5. We're going to put a bracket on that 5 to include the 5 into the range. Thank you for checking out my videos. Have a great day.